Kia ora koutou, welcome to Face to Face. As you know, we've been going talking to all of the top mayoral candidates, and today we have Nick Leggett. Welcome, Nick.
Morena, nice to see you, Jeff.
And Nick, so you're recently a father?
Yes.
How's that going?
Could you tell it? Could you look into my eyes and see they were just slightly more closed? And yeah, no, I am. Tane's 10 weeks old, so
oh wow, congratulations.
He's doing, making new milestones every day, and we're having a great time with him, which is great. Yeah.
And during an electoral campaign, that's
not the smartest move, but as we said, beggars can't be choosers. So we were very happy to have him, and you work with timing.
Yeah, awesome. Well, good luck to you with all of that.
Thank you.
And so one of the major platforms for the election, Nick, for you is really this whole idea of devolving more power to local communities. It's something we've talked about quite a bit in the Morgan Foundation through a lot of the treaty work. So can you tell us what really is, how do you see this actually working?
It's a really good question, and I welcome the opportunity to talk about it in a bit more depth. I think that Wellington, the council is often talking about how Wellington's got the smartest population in the country, and it's a very engaged community in many places. And what we want to do, I think, is take those smarts and actually apply them to solving community issues. And being in local government for a long time, like in Purirua even, many different types of communities, and one council struggles to really be the voice for all those effectively at different times. So if you look at Wellington is a city that's defined by its suburbs and its communities, not the other way around. And at the moment we've got this kind of top-down sort of one-size-fits-all for Wellington, a little bit from the council. And I think that it's time that firstly information, but actually influence is handed over to communities so they can set a plan in their local neighbourhoods or suburbs, flexible. It's going to differ, and there's going to be a different process that will evolve from each community, but set a plan and then have council funding follow that plan over a period of years. So it could be about reflecting the community through public space, it could be cycleways, it could be planning for a new town centre. So Karori, the Karori community are very keen on changing the shape and the feel of their town centre. And I've heard in different parts wanting local values reflected in if we're going to plan more intensification of housing, which I think we should. But actually, if you start the discussion among the people who are going to be living with it and let them guide it, it's not a shocking thing, and often you get a far better result. But this is not a tack on. I want to make that really clear. So a lot of people think, this is just the council. If this happens, the council's just going to, just chuck some money at a community, and that's going to make them, feel better, and we'll solve a few sort of contentious kind of relationships. This is about a whole new way of doing things for the Wellington City Council. It's about placing community viewpoints and engagement at the centre of what the council does, and really changing the whole way the bureaucracy relates to the different communities of Wellington. Yeah,
because that's a hard thing for a bureaucracy to cope with, right? Because whenever you do this sort of approach, you don't know where it's going to go.
It's scary.
Yeah. So for a bureaucracy that's been used to planning and having certain processes, this can be quite difficult. How do you? Because you've done this before in Purirua. How do you actually manage that transition within the bureaucracy?
I think it's hard, and I think the thing about Purirua, we've run what's called village planning for a long time, and there hasn't been a lot of money. I think Wellington can scale up a bit on this. There hasn't been a lot of money to do it, but actually what happens is communities start doing stuff for themselves. It's a very scary prospect for a bureaucracy and politicians at times as well. So if you look at places like Plympton, the village planning it's had a life of its own. So they now go and get funding to do their own projects, and they tick them off with the council. They drive the project, they plan it, they consult and engage with the community, and it's an amazing thing to watch. And the great thing about councils, you want politicians to be thinking about some of the bigger, longer term picture, I think. And often you see politicians diving down, and actually this allows politicians to actually step back and say, well, actually we're just going to let the community decide for themselves.
You guys do the detail. Yeah. Any examples of what we've seen coming out of that process in Purirua, what sorts of projects have popped out?
The first thing I'd say is, like a lot of these things, it's the end result is usually great, but it's the getting there that's actually the real benefit. So it's people meeting each other. So we've had better connections, both suburb to suburb, because often suburbs actually support other suburbs to do their thing. But it's the expertise that comes out of the woodwork. I mean, Waitangiroa, which is probably the most deprived community in the Wellington region, planned for a park at the centre of their community in front of a shopping mall. It was a big car park, and we took out the car parking, and we've got this $1 million park, and they planned it. They went out and asked the neighbourhoods about, well, what do you think? What do you want to see? They got kids from local schools involved, and there were hundreds of hours of voluntary community labour that went into that. And what's going to happen is when Transmission Gully is built, the link road down into Waitangiroa, the first thing that people are going to see is this amazing park that's just kind of reshaped and revitalised this community. And those kind of things, it's the doing is so important as well. And now there are relationships that between people in that community and children having pride in things that they've contributed to that wouldn't have been there otherwise.
Good example, because actually, some of the response you've had from your competitors within Wellington has been that this already happens in Wellington, but it happens in the richer communities, right? So how do you actually, it's all very well to get, the Candala Residents Association activated, because they're active, right? How do you actually get the likes of Waitangiroa activated in the first place?
I think it's looking wider than maybe a traditional residents association. Now, in many cases, residents associations will be the leader of these because they're the activated groups.
Yeah.
But it's another thing we've done in Porirua is we've seen that schools are the centre of communities, and often councils kind of ignore schools. Like politicians go along and you sort of become the and sort of the benevolent kind of mayor or whatever on the chains, and they think that they're doing a great job with kids because the kids go, oh, look at the chains. I worked out pretty soon into my term that kids are not the future, they're the present. And if you engage schools, there is a whole lot of expertise and smarts from kids, not just kids, but their parents and wider whānau, and also teachers and educators. Because and so if you think about schools, if you think about sports groups, you think about churches, there's a myriad of organisations in a community that often won't go to a residents group every month or won't come to a public meeting, but if they're engaged and they actually can see that they have an influence over making something happen, they will become involved. We're not all going to be activists every day of our lives, but there are many people who can contribute to the community if you widen their ability to do it. And that's, I think, if you look at Wellington, it's a bit piecemeal, and it hasn't been, like, for instance, Island Bay, and I know you support the Island Bay Cycleway, and I think a problem...
Well, I'm a cyclist.
Yeah, but I support cycleways as well. The point...
I'm agnostic on the design, to be fair, but I do think, I do support cycleways in general.
So do I.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about that is, I said at Aro Valley last night, that that kind of poisoned cycleways. It made it harder for cycleways to be rolled out around the city.
Absolutely.
And that's a tragedy, because we do need cycleways. We need to widen people's ability to move around and the modes that they use. But if you had said to the Island Bay community, actually, look, we want to put a cycleway in, could you guys, and not just, get cyclists on board, get local schools, get kids, everybody, could you please help us design it? Do you want it? And actually, let's talk about some of the principles involved here. Yeah. I think you would have had a different result. Yeah. And so I think that it's Wellington. I mentioned before the sort of the top-down stuff needs to change. We need just the sort of communities actually saying to the council, this is what's important to us. Give us some of the responsibility in delivering that, and it does really change relationships. There is a bit of a feeling in Wellington, quite a strong feeling actually, and because I'm the outsider, I often get it. People think that I'm the lightning rod. And it's not about thumping the council. It's about saying, hey, let's just change the way we do things. Let's try something new and embed it in the heart of the organisation. So actually, I think the challenge for the organisation will be getting, often councils, particularly a big council like Wellington, are siloed in terms of their different areas of work. Yeah. What you want to do is get teams working across every part of the council, because many different parts of the council will be there to assist communities deliver on their projects and help plan. And I see it as a really informing sort of a number of projects, because if you're going to be planning for your city's future, if you think about a district plan that sets planning rules, and what you need is the values and the sentiment of the people who live in neighbourhoods to actually help dictate how they're going to look and feel. And people are, in my experience, really open-minded when you start them with this sort of stuff.
Great stuff, Nick. One last question. A lot of talk about a predator-free Wellington as a possibility. Yep. What's your position on that?
Well, I've seen quite a bit. Like I went out to talk to the guy from Crofton Downs who had. I don't know if you've had any.
Kelvin Hasty. Yeah, we actually started with the initial funder for him.
Well, yes, that's right. Kelvin did say that, and I love it. I love the what's behind it. I like the idea, and I think that if I was elected mayor, I'd be pretty keen for the council to be into those projects and supporting communities to deliver them. So like the sentiments. The cat thing I think got blown out of proportion really. I think that what we need to do is go back to kind of principles on this and start there rather than the sort of administrative kind of reaction to policies, and so we need to get better at actually understanding what the big picture is for Wellington. Okay, thank you very much, Nick Leggett. Thanks for watching that right till the end. If you'd like to stay in touch with what we do here at the Morgan Foundation, click here or visit us at morganfoundation.org.nz. Ideas to action.